Hey, so most of the film reviews I do tend to be of new films I've just seen in the cinema, but occasionally I'm going to do reviews of films I'm watching. This is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. It's now 25 years old, released in 1991, and it's one of the better known adaptations of the Robin Hood legend. There's been many films, of course, the Errol Flynn version, the Russell Crowe version, which was, I think, quite widely praised. The comedy version, Robin Hood, Man on White, which I also have beside me. But anyway, it's this version I want to talk about for now. Um, I actually quite like this film. Although I'm going to critique certain aspects of it, overall I still find it an entertaining film, and I would still, as a film purely in entertainment terms, I still rank it quite highly. But the flaws, the factual flaws, are so widespread throughout the film that it's almost laughable now. It's directed by Kevin Reynolds. It stars Kevin Costner as Robin Hood. Um, Maria Mastrantonio as Maid Marian. Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham. He won Best Supporting Actor that year. And by the way, it was the second highest grossing film of 1991. Um, Christian Slater stars as Will Scarlet. There's other figures as well. Um, they're the main actors anyway. Um, so I want to address some of the very basic flaws. If you haven't seen the film, then these are, I guess, kind of spoilers. So after he escapes from Jerusalem with Azim, the Saracen, played by Morgan Freeman, that's a leading role as well, I should say. Um, he arrives in England. Now, the depiction shows the White Cliffs of Dover. If you're British, you're going to know that's in Kent. Somehow they then end up at Hadrian's Wall, which is not far from where I live, and that's running across the north of England. It's the old Roman wall, which is now a World Heritage Site. Now, in the film, it doesn't make it clear if they've been travelling for days or what, but whatever the case, this is clearly very fast travel time for the late 12th century. Now, this is where it gets really strange. The story is set around Nottinghamshire, which is the East Midlands. Robin himself is known in the film as Robert of Locksley. Locksley is derived from Locksley, slightly different spelling, which is a modern suburb of Sheffield. So the stories of Robin Hood are based around South Yorkshire and Nottinghamshire. So the Hadrian's Wall connection makes no sense. There is a point though where he saves a young peasant boy, and it's now known as Robin Hood's Tree. I've been there because the film is filmed there. So those basic facts are quite astounding, and I do think it's an example of Hollywood's sloppy treatment of British geography. Although we are a small country, we're not that small, um, and it's kind of like condensing everything as if it's in the same few acres. Um, Another thing is after he's attacked by Guy of Gisborne's troops for saving the boy, or after Robin is in this altercation with them, he berates Azim for not helping him. He says, "You've travelled 10,000 miles to help me, then you do nothing." Well, Jerusalem is nowhere near 10,000 miles from northern England. It's more like 3,000 at the most. 2,500, 2,800. Certainly not 10,000. 10,000 would be more like Australia. Now, it may sound like I'm being pedantic, but I if I'm being honest, I'm a little bit of a pedant when it comes to accuracy in films. I think it's important. Um, Maybe in those days, they wouldn't have had a concept of mileage in the same way that we do today, but nevertheless, 10,000 miles is a stretch. There's other things that the film treats. For example, the pagan role of the witch is slightly amateurish. Um, Having said that, the film itself is entertaining. Alan Rickman's excellent as the Sheriff of Nottingham. Um, I think by comparison to the Russell Crowe version, it's maybe not as good, though it does have redeeming features. The soundtrack's fantastic. That Brian Adams song is definitely timeless. It works very well. The opening scene with the Bayeux Tapestry, which actually I have to say is another inaccuracy. The Bayeux Tapestry predates the story by a century and a half. It would be like showing a Victorian scene for a modern film. The Bayeux Tapestry dates from the 1060s, the film set in the 1190s, so that's another anachronism. But like I said, all in all, it's an entertaining film. Good soundtrack, some good scenes. Yet another flaw is when Robin's camp is attacked by Celts. Well, the Celts, the ancient Britons, so to speak, had long been pushed westwards by this time, and that part of England was entirely Saxonized. And indeed, by that point, it had become under significant Norman influence. So the chances of Celts penetrating that far inland at that time was very, very unlikely. And I haven't come across any records of battles with the Celts as late as the 12th century. So there isn't a lot of anachronisms in this film. But leaving all that aside, if you want simply an entertaining film, it does rank highly. I will say a quick word about the Russell Crowe version. It treats Richard more realistically. Traditionally, Richard in the Robin Hood stories is seen as a benevolent king, the heroic medieval king. The truth is, the man was a bit of a tyrant. Apart from being a religious fanatic, he spent barely any time in England. King John is widely lambasted, but in many ways he was a better king than his brother. I mean, at King Richard's coronation, he forbade Jews and women from attending, and there was an anti-Jewish pogrom when he was crowned. So Richard was really not a great king, although he's kind of lauded as the great medieval chivalric king. Um, so I think the recent Russell Crowe adaptation was very good, and I hope they make a sequel to that. I can see a sequel developing. Um, as for the Robin Hood legends, well, for me, it's like King Arthur. I find it fascinating to see where this is derived from. Of course, Robin Hood, as we know him, was not a historic figure, but I suspect, like King Arthur, he is composed of various historic figures and various figures amalgamated together over time. So we'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts about this film. As for Kevin Costner as Robin, well, there's been wide criticism of the American accent. In fact, in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, that was kind of mocked by Carrie Elwes. Unlike some Robin Hoods, I have an English accent. That's true, but having said that, I still think that he was quite good at the role. Leaving aside the accent, I think he looked like a medieval warrior. Other than the accent, I think he done a good job. So yeah, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.